Renovation. Renovation in the station. Waka waka wah. Renovation loan. Renovation loan. Yeah. Thanks for the intro, Jaden. And today we're going to talk about how renovation loans work. That's right, Nathan. We're going to look at how to get money from the banks for financing your home improvements. We're going to look at a couple of best practices and a few tips on renovating with a budget. Natos, let's dive right in. All right, Natos. Elephant in the room, the most important thing when you're looking at renovation is how much can you borrow? So what are the sort of 4 categories of renovations that you can do at home and improvements that you can do to your house? So at a high level, there's 4 different ways you can go about it. You can do a minor renovation where the banks will typically lend up to 90% of the property value with things like lender's mortgage insurance. They do limit the amount of cash you can get, generally up to $100,000. You can do major renovations where the bank gets more involved, once again lending up to 90% of the property value with things like fixed price tenders, plans and specifications. You can completely knock down the house and rebuild it completely. Once again, the lenders will let you lend up to 90 to 95% in this situation, or you can add a granny flat. Once again, banks lending up to 90%, wanting a bit more plans such as plans and specifications. All right, Natos, so like with a renovation loan like that, will they always pay you in like stages and progress payments, or will they just give you the money out? How does it work when you're trying to get a loan from the bank for this sort of stuff? Typically, if you're doing a minor renovation under $100,000, the banks will just give you the money and you go about it on your own. Once you're lending over $100,000 or there's plans and specifications and there's set progress payments, the bank will get more involved and request an invoice every time you want a progress payment. So remembering, depending on the work you're doing, will mean that you'll either need to get the bank involved or they'll just give you the money to do the works required. Yeah, the banks can be a little bit conservative with construction loans because they're worried about having stuff that's half complete. If you start a renovation and it's missing walls or there's a kitchen without a sink in it, it's going to cause problems down the line. So that's why the banks have a few more rules when you're looking at renovation loans. So let's talk about the scope of works that you're going to be completing. As we said before, there's 4 real ways you can go about your renovation. Now, what does that mean when you're looking to lend money? We're going to start off with the first one, which is a minor renovation. So Jaden, maybe walk me through a little bit more details as to what that renovation looks like. When I'm doing a minor renovation, what I need to be aware of, and little shortfalls that can happen when you're doing this. Yeah, so a minor renovation can be simple stuff like painting your walls, like putting a couple of aircon units in there, anything that doesn't involve moving a wall. It's kind of house rules versus the block. It's the simple cosmetic stuff that a minor renovation involves. So you're typically not going to need to build on this. That's why if you're doing a minor renovation, the bank will usually lend you between $50,000 to $100,000 without asking too many questions. Depends on the bank and depends on the situation. But it will rely on the equity in your property. So it's kind of assuming that you've owned the property for a couple of years and that the value has potentially increased or you've paid down the loan. So there are a couple limitations there with minor renovations. So the best rule of thumb for minor renovations is anything that you can do on your own is generally considered a minor renovation. As Jen said, painting, doing maybe even a small kitchen renovation, those are the sort of things that the bank will give you money. No problems, no questions asked. As long as it's under a certain amount of money, you've got the money and you can do what you need to do. So the second way of a renovation loan is a major renovation. So Jane, what does a major renovation involve? You're basically getting a builder involved. So it involves massive change to the house. You're adding a bedroom, you're removing a kitchen, you're sticking in a new bathroom, you're putting in a pool. It's any type of renovation where you're getting a professional involved. And it's not just Natos and his mates and you're paying them in beer.
Drink up while it's cold, ladies.
So effectively, a major renovation is you're going to have a builder involved, you're going to have a set agreement with exactly what you're going to get, and it's typically a fixed price tender, meaning that the price isn't going to vary, it's not going to blow out, you know what you're going to get, and it's going to have an end date. There's usually set progress payments throughout the fixed price tender, and the bank will pay in arrears of the work being completed, which protects you to make sure you get a complete product. The awesome thing when you're doing a major renovation is the bank will take into consideration the increased value of your property. So in other words, if your property is currently worth 500 grand, if you're spending $100,000 in renovations, providing everything all values up and it makes sense, your property is then worth the 500 plus 100 equals 600,000, and they'll lend against that, which means you might be able to borrow a bit more and not have to contribute as much as your own cash as with a minor renovation where the bank's just relying on the current property value. Now the third way you can do it is a complete rebuild. So Jaden, what does that look like practically speaking? It looks like But yeah, so a complete rebuild is just that, where you knock down the existing house, you get a full fixed price contract from a licensed builder who's gonna go out there and build the place for you. Again, it's gonna rely on what the property is gonna be worth once it's completed. So you're gonna need to get a valuation, and there's a lot more steps involved with that. Getting a licensed builder involved can also cost you a little bit more than when you're doing the old Bunnings and Nails' Mates style non-structural renovation.
And the last way to complete a renovation loan is adding a granny flat. So Jaden, if I've got a bit of land, bit of space on my property, what does that look like?
So in Sydney and Melbourne, it's pretty common to stick a granny flat on the back, and the council zoning is a bit more relaxed. Up here in Brisbane, it's not as easy, and you need to make sure you can actually put it there and the council will actually approve it. But it's just exactly that. You still need a licensed builder that's gonna put the granny flat in there. It still needs to be on a fixed price contract, and you still have to go to the bank, much the same as with the structural renovation to get the loan approved.
So Jaden, for those looking to renovate out there, what are some practical tips from your own experience you can share?
Yeah, so Monique and I renovated a place on the Gold Coast a couple of years ago. It was in Miami, beautiful house. Well, it wasn't when we moved in there, it was pretty shitty, but it was beautiful after we did it. We decided to use equity and kind of our savings to do the renovations, which was awesome, except for the fact that we ran out of money sort of 3/4 of the way through. So then, like you said earlier, Natos, the bank wouldn't give me a loan because the property was half complete. So I had to get a credit card, I had to get a personal loan, I had to borrow money, and it was terrible. So at the end, I was lucky that I got all these personal loans and credit cards I was sort of managing. I managed to get a valuation on my property. I increased the loan based on the equity, and it kind of worked out all right. But my biggest tip there, and we see it pretty often, is a lot of people sort of run in head first with renovations and get caught out because there's price creep and things end up costing more. Or if you're like me, you end up getting excited over the dwarf taps compared to the generic taps, and you spend a lot more on little stuff that really doesn't matter.
Yeah, so a finance tip here is if you're gonna do a renovation and it is gonna be quite major, make sure you get the bank involved or you get a fixed price tender. I've seen it time and time again, examples like what happened with Jaden here, where people start the renovation, they think they've got enough funds to self-fund it, and then they run out of money halfway through. Well, the banks don't like coming in halfway through a renovation, and they won't extend funds in these circumstances. So always best practice to get the bank involved first before you start the renovation. Have a fixed price tender, and you'll avoid a lot of stress and a lot of heartache through the process. So Jane, I'm looking to renovate and add a bit of value to my property. What are some quick wins that I can do straight away on my own as a DIY job?
One of my favorite shows is Selling Houses Australia, Nathan, so I've been waiting a long time for this moment. Simple stuff that makes a massive difference is painting. Painting the walls is the single best and most inexpensive way of adding value to a property. Remember we did it on your unit at Ashgrove, and just the difference it made in a couple of minutes, like it was actually a weekend. You didn't do a lot, I did most of the work. Painting is the biggest one. The second one is light fittings. A lot of those older places have gross light fittings with like dead bugs sitting in the bottom of them and they look disgusting. Fix up the light fittings, it's pretty cheap to do. You have to get a licensed electrician unless you're my mate Navjot who kind of did it himself. Shout out to Nav. And the third one is actually handles and doorknobs. Make a huge difference because again, in some of those older houses, they've got those gross brass doorknobs and golden handles and they just look disgusting. So those three things can really add a lot of value because really the property is only worth what someone thinks it is. So if it presents a bit better, the paint, the doorknobs, the sort of lights, if it looks nice and bright and beautiful, it'll make a huge difference and it's a good way to renovate on a budget.
Would you like that, Chris?
Yes, sir.
So that's it for today, guys. We hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, hit us up in the comments below.